All right, it's a new week. That means a new episode of Fixing Your Kanban with professional Kanban trainers Todd Miller, Daniel Vacanti, and me, Ryan Ripley. I just want to start this episode with a written statement. I've been asked to apologize for Kanbanabunga from the exit of the last episode, and I will never say that statement again.
That's good. Thank you.
All right, so let's move on. Hopefully everyone's hopefully you've caught the first two videos of this series, right? We started with WIP limits and how that helps us get to a stable and ultimately a predictable system. We've talked about throughput, which helps us now that we have a predictable system that helps us start forecasting the multiple things that could be done within a time period, like a period of time that you define. And so this week we're going to do a quick survey of cycle time. Right. And so, Dan, again, same tee up, same premise from the previous two. When it comes to cycle time, what's so important about this? What does it enable? And maybe even how do we get started with this? If we could go into like those three pieces and just let you kind of take a big crack at it, and then we'll ask you some questions along the way.
Sure. Just first, I want to say, I know I said this before, but it kind of freaks me out that we all wore the same thing for 3 weeks in a row.
That's weird, right?
I haven't changed since.
Since 3, yeah. I don't doubt that. All right, cycle time. You'll remember from the last video that when we're dealing with metrics, first thing we have to have is that point at which we consider work to have started and the point at which we consider work to have finished, or reverse those for the video.
Right.
Cycle time, then, once you have those 2 points defined, at a minimum, you have to have those 2 points defined. Cycle time then is just simply defined as the total amount of elapsed time that occurs between those 2 points. So when an item crosses that start point, we start our stopwatch, leave the stopwatch running. When it crosses that endpoint, you stop the stopwatch. Total amount of elapsed time. So no subtracting out weekends, no subtracting out holidays, no subtracting out nights, none of that stuff. It's just the total amount of elapsed time. Why elapsed time? Because that's what our customers care about. That's how our customers think about the world. And as much as possible, we want our Kanban metrics to be in the language of the customer. We don't want them to have to necessarily adapt to how we think. Keep in mind that you can have multiple start and end points throughout your process. So you could theoretically, and I wouldn't want to say theoretically, maybe should be measuring multiple cycle times throughout your process. That's perfectly valid. And as I said, in most contexts, even necessary. So you can have multiple of those. Why do we care about cycle time? Because fundamentally, when you're doing flow, when you're doing anything really, when you are delivering value for your customer, you think you know what is valuable, but you don't. The only time that you know something is valuable is when you get it in your hands, at the hands of your customer. So generally speaking, the reason we care about cycle time is because we want to get stuff into the hands of our customer as quickly as possible, not because we want to get stuff done fast, but because we want that feedback as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I know. Do you get one of you guys want to jump in with that?
I was actually thinking, Dan, when I heard you say the word finished, right? I was going to pull on that a little bit and say, well, what do you mean by finished? Because finish could mean many things, but I think you just answered it there. And I think that's one thing to call out, to be very explicit about. And in the Kanban guide, right in the definition of Kanban, it says Kanban is a strategy for optimizing the flow of value through a process, right? This isn't, it's the flow of really potential value, but we don't know what we don't know. So if finished to you means we're passing it off to another department, we're giving it to another area that they then need to do with it. We need to be kind of cautious about the language that we're using when we say finish. Finish in this is, it's done. The customer has it. Is that okay to say?
I think so. If you're talking about that downstream step, potentially being our customer, that's what we need feedback from, is that downstream step. Yep. That's what we need when we want that as quickly as possible. The last thing we want is building up a whole bunch of work that is dependent on this downstream step that we're not getting feedback from. So absolutely. But it's about the process. I think where you're going with this is as much as possible where we can align finish to get it in your customer's hands.
Yes.
Whoever that customer is and wherever that customer is defined, that's what we care about.
Yeah. And let's be explicit about what finished means.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, Ryan, I think I answered 2 of the 3 questions you said. What was that?
So getting started. I want to make sure I think the survey is great, kind of given that high level overview, and of course the Kanban guide at prokanban.org and kanbanguides.org are great resources as well. But as far as getting started, like what would your recommendation in general? Of course, every flow system and every context is different, right? But when it comes to getting started, Dan, what do you think is most important here?
Yeah, so this is one of the reasons why I love teaching the professional Scrum with Kanban class. Is because Scrum is very explicit, in the framework around who has what accountabilities.
Right.
And so essentially, in terms of getting started, I like to coach teams to get started with controlling what they can control. Right. Let's define those boundaries of the Kanban process within what we can control. Pretty quickly, you'll get really good at those boundaries, and we'll want to talk about what's happening upstream, what's happening downstream, what's happening in other parts of the organizations. But to get started, if controlling what you can control means the second, if you're doing software, the second that a developer starts writing software, well, okay, that's started. So it's I don't know if either of you want to elaborate on that, but that's really where to get going. And then over time, what you will do is you will slowly expand the boundaries of your Kanban system outward to start incorporating some of these other questions that we might want to answer.
Or you might even start making organizational changes that allow you to expand the boundaries.
Yep.
Right. So I think it's a good catalyst for internal or organizational or systemic or whatever word you want to use, change in the environment that you're working in, because as you see the limits of how far out you can control versus what impacts you, it starts making that transparent, right? And then suddenly cycle times are impacted on individual pieces of work, and then you can run experiments. Well, if we change the way we're organized or structured, does it go up or down? And it gives us this boundary, but also this means to verify, are the changes we're making to our system actually having an impact, right?
Yep. And to keep the video short, I just want to end with a disclaimer. There are so many other dimensions to cycle time that we're not going to get into here that I'm hoping that we can cover in later videos. Back to the premises around predictability, as Ryan, as you just said, back around understanding if we're improving, things like that. They're all other applications for cycle time. But for me, the reason you focus on cycle time is to get that faster. The reason you care about shortening cycle times is to get that faster customer feedback.
Love it.
Excellent. All right, everybody, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that you can see the follow-up videos that we create about cycle time. And maybe someday we'll even talk about cycle time scatter plots and what that leads to and all that fun stuff. But for now, we're going to leave the discussion on cycle time here. And next week, we're going to go to, I think we're heading off to item aging.
The most important metric of them all, yes.
Yeah, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you know exactly when item aging drops. Check out the videos below. We hope that those help in your Kanban practices as well. Check out the socials for updates on this and other videos from Agile for Humans. And you know what? Next week, item aging. We'll see you there.